Hello. I was wondering if there is a possibility to talk about happiness in a simple way. So this is my solution for it. If you look closely, you can see all that heat circling, very much like on Table Mountain. Not sure, probably in the back you would have to have very good eyes. In the front, it's much more apparent that you see the stuff going down because the projector that Ravi organized for us is so incredibly strong that it generates all that heat with the air coming up and down. With possibly the only two exceptions you have. This little ugly purple thing over here, which clearly and then you have this turquoise stuff on the other side. And you know, my fellow Austrian Sigmund Freud thought that all we could possibly hope for in life is a transformation from utter misery into common unhappiness. Now, we've worked on, in the studio, we've worked on the subject for quite a while. I've done a good number of talks about it. We are working on a film, on a documentary film on my own happiness since about 3.5 years. And as it's still not done, we are in rough cut stage. I found it to be much, much, much more difficult to do than I had hoped for. Found that the difference between graphic design and filmmaking is a much bigger step than I had anticipated. But on the way there, we were asked to do an exhibition for the ICA, the Institute for Contemporary Art in Philadelphia. And we went to Philly, and they showed us two fantastic, beautiful, large galleries that they said that this is going to be the venue for your show. But as we walked around the museum, they had all these other spaces, like little shitty spaces, like, you know, the staircase or the hallways. And we said, so what's with all these non-spaces? And they said, well, nobody ever uses it, but if you want to, you can do stuff in those as well. So with this one question, we doubled our existing gallery space, and we wound up with, you know, elevators. There was also a bigger elevator that had different doors opening up differently. There was a wheelchair ramp that I cherry-picked all the research, all the data that I had come across to display on. Now, with this question, if I wouldn't have asked, we wouldn't have gotten. So one of the videos we created for it was this thing that basically says exactly that. If I don't ask, I won't get. And I just let that run for a second and So I have to ask, of course, how everybody's feeling. So who is a zero right here? Can we have the lights up? Zeros. Who feels like shit? Number twos, who feels pretty bad? Nobody. I am bored. Who is bored? I think there's one gentleman in the back. Things are okay, number six? Well, you either are too afraid to lift your hand, or I feel good, number eight. Wow, that's about, I would say, 70%, and I love life, number 10. So that's clearly the happiest bunch I had ever seen. And very much questions this next slide. As you can see, you're supposed to be profoundly unhappy. This is thousands of psychologists going all around the world, checking with people. Well, who knows? I'll quickly, I hate definitions, but the subject is so huge that I'll spend 30 seconds on it. I think it's helpful to talk about happiness in terms of length. So there's very short things like an orgasm, a moment of bliss. There is medium things like an afternoon spent with a good book, satisfaction or well-being. And then there is very long-term things like that can last the entire life, like finding the thing that I'm good for in life. Now, those three things have extremely little in common. A moment of bliss, or let's say an orgasm with finding what I'm good for in life, unless you're in porn, that actually will not coincide a lot. If I look at me as an individual, or if I look at you as an individual, what plays a role, what plays the biggest roles are these three things. First, activities, and they're non-repetitive activities. So your decision to come to design Indaba from a psychological view has been a fantastic decision, even if you hated it here. Simply because you didn't go to design Indaba last week, and I likely you won't go to design Indaba next week, unless you're like some of the speakers that I might meet somewhere else next week. But in general, it's non-repetitive, and therefore you don't get used to it, and therefore it's important to your well-being. Number two, life conditions. I'll talk a little bit later about it. Surprisingly, play a very tiny role. Most psychologists think only 10%. And then third, genetics do play a big role, about half. But since we can't change anything about it, I won't really talk much about it. So in my own case, I was born 3 miles from the German border. So I tend to plan things out and be actually surprisingly unspontaneous, which is even crazier when I think that all the evidence shows me that spontaneous, non-repetitive activities are actually the things that do make the biggest influence in my daily life. So we had a designer come in from Argentina and help us design this thing here, this little motion graphics that's called Be More Flexible, as a little reminder. In this case, unlike the water balloons that you saw before, that was all shot in camera, this was shot without a camera, or created without a camera. This is pure computer graphics. There is no camera involved in here. Men are as happy as women are. Climate plays a surprisingly tiny role. The people in San Diego, California, the US's best climate, are as happy as the people in Buffalo, New York, where it's the shittiest climate in all of the United States. Money only plays a role from up to a certain level. If you're very poor, money plays a big role. In the US, all the way up to $85,000 a year, the differences are measurable. Above $85,000, it makes no difference whatsoever. The differences are too small to measure, which still is surprising that somebody who makes $850,000 or $8 million is just as happy as the person with 85. White people are as happy as black people. Age plays a tiny difference. Older people are a little bit happier than younger people. Ugly people are as happy as supermodels. If your health problems are manageable and repeatable, they play no role. And now it starts to play a big role. If you are sociable, meaning you have a lot of friends, you have good friends, that makes a big difference. If you are religious, it makes a difference. Religious people are happier than non-religious people, and married people are happier than single people. So I am an agnostic, I'm single, I'm not married, so I clearly have ways to go. Income-wise, I'm fine. I make about the money where it wouldn't make a big difference anymore, so I'm totally fine with my tiny design studio. I don't really need more money. This is a stretch of six double pages that we ran in a magazine that said, money does not make me happy. And because the typography was designed by my good friend Ken Mickey in Japan, I took the form very seriously and was very anal about it being printed exactly right. And the printer last second lost one of the sets of films and was too sheepish to call us up and just replaced it himself. And then at the end it read, money does make me happy. We only discovered that when we got the magazine in our subscription, and hundreds of thousands of magazines were printed, so there was nothing that we could possibly do about it. And I told this to a friend of mine in Austria, what a miserable project that was, and he said, well, we'll have to run this again. And he managed to talk Austria's biggest casino in letting us wrap the casino building with the same message. So then on the big pedestrian zone, it just said money. And when you look down the side street, it said, does not make me happy. For the show itself, we had a fine advertising budget, which resulted then in very good audience participation. The show is now in its 5th location and had created a number of audience records for the museums that it's been. Here it's at MoCA in Los Angeles. We had a little sausage invitation that probably helped. And so by working up onto the show, but also working up onto the film, I obviously, that was the reason to do the project in the first place, did a lot of research. I thought it would be a good project to force me into that research that I'm interested in, but probably wouldn't quite have the stamina to go through if there wouldn't be a design project attached to it. Out of the many, many books that I read and out of the many, many scientists that I talked to, actually, I preferred this one. This was my favorite one. And when I contacted the author, it turned out that his wife is an artist, so she knew our work, and he was very willing to talk to me, and he became the scientific advisor of the film and of the show. The reason I was drawn to it was because, the reason I was drawn to Jonathan Haidt was because he is clearly a scientist. It's everything that he says, he has to back up with proper data. And at the same time, he still is very much part of my life. I feel that he's talking to me, like it's not about these tiny little aspects of psychology that prove another psychologist wrong, but it's really about the big living aspects. And he said that I could increase my level of well-being by using this one or two or three of them, what he thinks are the most efficient strategies if you want to do so. And they would be meditation, cognitive therapy, and drugs. And I thought, fantastic, this is the backbone for our film. I'll do all three, I'll try them out, and report back. Leaving drugs for last because I thought that's the easiest and most fun part of the whole bunch. He talks about the conscious and the unconscious mind as a tiny rider, the conscious mind, sitting on this large elephant, the unconscious mind. And the rider thinks that he can tell the elephant what to do and where to go, but the elephant really has his own point of view. And it's only through hard training that the two can basically learn how to work together, and that training is done in meditation, it's done in cognitive therapy, and it's done with psychopharmacological drugs, only with a different kind of strategy. Now, I found some data that showed me that if you're a guy whose name is George, and you're not quite sure where you want to live, somehow Georgia sounds good to you. And then if you're another guy called Dennis, and you're not quite sure you want to become a lawyer, possibly a teacher, somehow dentist sounds best to you. And if you're a woman called Paula, not sure who to marry, Jack or John, somehow Paul sounds best. And even though we all think that we make these decisions ourselves, the statistics show that there are more Georges who are living in Georgia, there are more Dennises who become dentists, and there are more Paulas who wind up married to Paul than would be statistically viable. Now, when I saw this, I thought, well, these, stupid Americans are clearly unaware of the things that really drive them. And then I, looked at my own family. It's my mom, Carolina, marrying my dad, Carl. This is my grandmother, Josephine, marrying my granddad, Joseph. So, if there's a Stephanie in the audience, later in this program, I'll show my cell phone number. I'll quickly talk about emotions. These are the 6 main emotions, and you can see what a fantastic actor I am. I think this is supposed to be sadness, yes. This is joy, yes. Disgust, surprise, and anger. Now, if you... Oh, fear, I forgot. So if you paid attention, 6 basic emotions, only one of them properly positive, joy, everything else either in the middle or negative, which is the reason for our negativity bias. It's a term in psychology that basically shows, or you see it very easily, is the reason why every attempt at creating a positive news organization online or in a newspaper failed immediately because we are just simply not interested. If I read a blog about our own work, it can be 100 positive comments, but I am zooming in on the negative one because that's the one that's most interesting to me. And I actually do know why this is so. Our brain contains a shortcut, the amygdala, that allows fear to come in much, much faster than joy. If I actually am in danger, my body can sense it way before the eyes have the time to send the proper information back. And this is all because of my prehistoric ancestors who actually were confronted by proper fears, and it made a lot of sense for the brain to turn fear way up. But I, of course, lead a very safe life, free from those dangers, and I think that I would have a much fuller life if I would allow, if I would overcome my fear more often. Now, in the show, we have a little push button that you push, and a little card comes out of it that gives you an instruction on what to do while you're in the show. And every 50th card basically says, text a joke, and it's my cell phone number, so I get these jokes now all the time. The show is in Paris right now. That's one that came up a while ago. And I got another one yesterday that says, I told my dad he should embrace his failures. He cried. Then he hugged me. Just like I did with you guys, we measure the happiness of the visitors of the show with these chewing gum machines. So if you have a step back, this is at the beginning of Philadelphia. This is a week into Philadelphia. You see, so Philly is basically going for a 7 there. This is Toronto, a week into Toronto. And this is 3 weeks into Toronto. So clearly, Canadians happier. Maybe not quite as happy as you guys in here, but doing pretty well. We have a piece of typography saying, step up to it, that has a projection on it, and there is a piece of plexi hanging in front of it, and the viewer recognizes that if she actually smiles, the typography notices the smile and turns colorful. There's a smile detection software in there. See, that's when somebody smiles. So this is quite self-evident. So there's a lot of people in the exhibition who smile for the typography. And because smiling is contagious, we actually have a fairly good mood inside the show. When I talked to Jonathan about doing these experiments, he said, well, before you go off to Bali and meditate for 3 months, just also know that this is a skill. And he quickly tested, he had a whole list on his computer, and he quickly tested my skills. And I was surprised I was very, very good in many, many things, but within 10 minutes found out that I'm actually terrible at some things. And one of them is thankfulness. I'm just not a very thankful person. And as an example, at talks like this, I very rarely thank the organizers. So let's change this now. It's Ravi around. Come on up for a second. Last one. Thanks, my dear. Thank you. We've been treated unbelievably well. Just amazing. What a really great time we've had since arriving on Sunday. Number 2, too big to talk about. I could fill the whole evening. It's a big, big subject. We'll talk about it a lot in the film. Was subject to the whole meditation part of it, because there is a particular kind of limitation that actually is supposedly increasing empathy. And we wound up doing a tiny gesture, like creating this typography for the show that is every letter of every word. Every letter is touching every word, meaning the music is pumped through the letter and creating the waves in each letter, and then every word together is touching every other word or influencing every other word. Third, humility. I don't give a shit about it. I'm not a humble person. I know so many brash people that are not from Texas, but whom I like a lot, so last one, I don't care. Bananas, lots of them on a wall saying, because some of them are ripe and some of them are not ripe, self-confidence produces fine results. And of course, that was readable at the opening of the gallery. And then a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, and 5 weeks later. All the while, of course, there was a fairly strong smell. And a sort of companion piece made out of coat hangers for a street that had fashion stores left and right, saying worrying solves nothing. And that's probably one of those maxims that I've really learned and incorporated. I am actually not a big worrier. I can say that over the last 4 days, I rarely worried about having to talk. And if I do worry at night, I also did that last night, I just put up the air conditioning in the hotel room, and I imagine I'm sitting in this super warm truck driving through the extra cold Siberia, and I have all my little sausages and things with me, and there's all sorts of dangers going on outside of Siberia. I might be attacked or so, but I'm in this very safe truck, and I always sleep in. Now, I always fall asleep. No ideas come out of it, but at least I can sleep properly. I mentioned we had a wall of cherry-picked data, and I'll just give you one single example of it. This is from Jonathan Haidt's research, companionate love versus passionate love. If you look at it on a graph, clearly passionate love is so much more stronger, and companionate love looks kind of dinky there on the bottom side. This is if you look at the relationship from a 6-month perspective. If you look at it from a 60-year perspective, though, Jonathan says that it is actually biologically impossible to stay passionately in love for more than 6 months because those incredibly high serotonin levels in your body are very, very unhealthy. And so the body has to bring those crazy levels down. The levels are very, very similar or very comparable to taking cocaine. And if the couples that he interviewed that were in 40-year relationships all reported that they are companionate in love with a little passion mixed in. We also, I really wanted in the show some sort of exercise spike because I found that from doing the film that exercise actually made a bigger difference in my life than meditation did. Even here in Cape Town every morning, a whole bunch of us went running every morning, also today in this fantastic landscape. And this one, you generate the electricity by pedaling, and if you pedal long enough, it says, doing the things I set out to do increases my overall level of satisfaction. Meaning that if I have an idea and say, oh, I should do this, and I wind up not actually doing it, this leaves this little piece of residue, and if I collect a lot of these residues, it actually does lower my overall well-being. And I know that if you're at all like me in a situation like this at a conference, I quite often think, prompted by a speaker or by an exhibit, oh, this looks smart, I could do something in that direction, or it prompts something else. And but then I failed to write it down. So if you've had a situation like this over the last 3 days, where you thought, I should do this, I urge you to write it down now and put a deadline onto it right away, whatever that deadline might be, and then just stick with it. getting stuff done is definitely one of my favorite things. I also found a repeatable way to create a moment of bliss. And you could easily do this here in South Africa. So take a scooter or a motorbike, any MP3 player, put 10 songs on it that you know you're gonna like, but don't really remind you of other stuff, and find a fantastic road, one that's really beautiful, hopefully one that's not really busy so that you can ride around without a helmet, and so that the hair can go through the hair. And every single time I tried it, I had goosebumps going down my spine. One last ingredient that is super important is no purpose. So it doesn't work as a commute, it doesn't work if you have to go there anyway, it only works if the ride itself is totally without function. So for the Chicago show, we put all these little cigarette papers up on a wall that basically then reads, "Uselessness is gorgeous." And I think that there is a whole little future design section in there for me, because it just triggered this thing that to do something that actually doesn't have a purpose, that there is a beauty in there that I've always neglected so far, being, as most of us are in the design world, so very obsessed with the function of things. Wrapping up, what makes us unhappy? Inequality, I think we've already heard also from a good number of the other speakers. Surprising to me is a long commute to work. Unemployment, unsurprising. And I'll quickly talk about crime. There's a fantastic new work and book out by Steven Pinker, very good researcher at Harvard, who can show very believably that crime went down steadily every single century over the last 20 centuries, over the last 2,000 years. And of course, he looks at that from a percentage point of view, because fewer people were alive in the Middle Ages. But in the 20th century, with both World War I, World War II, the Holocaust in there, fewer people died than in the 19th. In the 19th, fewer people died than in the 18th. In the 18th, fewer people died in the 17th, and so forth and so on. He also shows that if you live now among the Hulis, which is a very colorful tribe in Papua New Guinea, in Indonesia, very close to where I was in Bali, if you live among them now, your chances of finding death by the hand of another man, that's how he defines criminality, are actually 7 times as high than if you live in Detroit, which is America's most dangerous city. So what he's saying is basically that civilization works, things are actually getting better, and we made another little type piece about it that says, now is better. This one has no computer graphics inside, that's all shot in camera, and I'll just let that run. You can turn the music up.
It never will heal. And you are the one that constantly peels. The skin away each and every day. Why won't you bleed? Why won't you bleed? Why won't you bleed? But I have a way of seeing these things. The skin on your bones, it constantly knows. Pull it away, pull it away, pull it away.
Let's quickly talk about the other side. What makes us happy? Many friends, good friends, accomplishment, if you actually do what you set out to do, non-repetitive activities, religion, I can't help you there. And you probably know what's coming, no? So I have to ask you all to get up. And we are going to sing a song together. Now, I don't mean sing a little bit. I mean belting it out, like address it and completely belt it out. It's not going to work otherwise. Also, I'm a terrible, terrible, terrible singer. So I would hope that you overpower me, even though I have the microphone. And it's a German song. But it's one that you might have heard before. And to make things easy, I'll have the lyrics coming up karaoke style. But you'll really have to belt it. So you'll get the melody slowly. Oh, my clients drive me crazy, never show no guts at all. For the peanuts that they pay me, they get logos 10 feet tall. Well, not bad, but I mean like belting it, like, really, really, really go for it. You were okay, but now this time, with breathe and with power. So we go. Drop that line, picks a burst and makes the sections be bind up his Frankenstein. All my clients drive me crazy, never show no guts at all. For the peanuts that they pay me, they get logos 10 feet tall. Stefan always shows the same stuff, see it all on that.com. Your clients are not that tough, he should look where I am from. All my clients drive me crazy, never show no guts at all. For the peanuts that they pay me, they get logos 10 feet tall. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let's do that test again. Zeros, who feels like shit? Clearly one non-singer over there. Number 2's pretty bad. Gains 2 number 2's. Number 4, I'm bored. 1, 2 bored people. We had no bored people before, so clearly I did not do a very good job here. Things are okay. Number 6. Almost nobody is okay. 8, I feel good. 25%, and I love life. Number 10s. Oh, wow. Now, I, of course, think that watching me talk about happiness is as unlikely to make you happier as watching me run in the morning will make you skinnier. Very much likely you'd have to do the exercises, meaning meditation, cognitive therapy, or the drugs yourself. However, I do have I did meet up with a scientist in Philadelphia who is at the University of Philadelphia there, and he came up with a beautiful little scheme, scientifically proven, where he says that if just before I go to bed, think about 3 things that work today, and let that be my last thought, that actually would increase my overall well-being. And there's a whole bunch of arguments why that is so, and currently we're actually working on an app that goes in that direction. Now, of course, for definitely the 2 boards people, but there might be more in the audience who think that, this is all crap, that I've lived too long in the United States, and all this talk about happiness is all beside the point. So in that case, of course, you can always go and visit this guy.
And I am happy, I am relaxed. I am happy, I am relaxed. I am happy, I am relaxed. Boo, 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 boo.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.